Hi, it's Joe Mazumdar of Exploration Insights at the Pre-PDAC Metals Investment Forum in Toronto. And with me right now, I've got an executive, Andrew Strickland from Blackstone Minerals. Blackstone Minerals, ASX listed, but also with an OTC listing. Focus is on nickel, advanced nickel project in Vietnam. So, Andrew, give me a bit of background on why Vietnam.
Yeah, Vietnam's probably not the first place people think about when it comes to mining, but Vietnam's got a strong, long history of mining, with the world's largest tungsten mine actually in Vietnam as well. Vietnam gives us a great access to excellent labour at a very low cost. It's currently half the price of labour out of China, for example. Access to renewable power, where 50% of the grid in Vietnam is actually based on renewables. As well as really great government support and incentives for us to develop our project in Vietnam.
So initially this project was developed, I don't know, more than a decade before, but it was a nickel concentrate, and the tariffs that it had made it uneconomic. But you guys are thinking something completely different right now.
That's right. So the original operation just produced a nickel concentrate from a 450,000 tonne per annum concentrator. The tariff came on, and in today's market with the current nickel price, absolutely would still be making good money actually. But the nickel price was really at an all-time low at that point, and so with the tariff, the low price, they chose to shut it down. When they did that, they didn't realise, sitting adjacent to this massive sulfide was an enormous disseminated sulfide, which we've got currently about 123 million tonnes at 0.37% nickel. So that was never really explored and identified, and never really recognised opportunity that was sitting just there.
And so now you've got, two components that they never had. Like, not only are you looking at the disseminated large tonnage targets, open pit, some underground at what you call the Ban Phuc mine in the Ta Khoa project, you're also looking at the downstream. What is the downstream like? They went up to a concentrate, but you're going to go beyond a concentrate.
Yeah, that's right. So we originally looked downstream to try and avoid the tariff, but as we looked at it more, it just made more and more sense that this is actually just the right business model for nickel concentrate that needs to go into the battery EV market. As you go downstream, you are avoiding a lot of the issues that you have with concentrates, which go through smelters. So we're not sensitive to any of the iron MgO ratios that I have through the conventional nickel smelters. Things like arsenic are stabilized through the process and are not really a sensitivity that we have. And the overall payabilities that you're receiving looking at a nickel sulfate come through to even like a battery precursor are far greater and far better for the overall project.
So technically, obviously, miners are pretty good at mining and generating a concentrate. What's your capacity, technical capacity, to take that concentrate and, let's say, make a nickel sulfate product?
Okay. Nickel sulfate itself is very simple in the scheme of things. So obviously, there's a lot of issues at the moment with nickel sulfate projects coming up, but it is relatively new. What we've done is we've gone out to some of the world's the greatest nickel producers, and we've handpicked people out of their organisations which have great experience operating nickel refineries and a really good understanding of executing upon projects. We brought those people into our team, and as we're bringing them into our team, we're growing our overall downstream hydrometallurgical experience. And these same people have been running our piloting programs that we've run through ALS laboratories in Perth to improve our understanding of this flow sheet that we're trying to develop.
So right now, in terms of study level, you're at what, the PFS level?
No, we've completed the PFS. We are roughly halfway through the DFS. We aim to finish the DFS in July this year, and that will incorporate the learnings from our recent piloting program, which completed at the end of last year.
Right. And that pilot program takes what you got from Ban Phuc and generates a nickel sulfate?
Yeah, that's correct. So we were lucky enough to, because we have the existing operation, we put a 1,200 metre development drive from the underground workings through the open pit, collected about 3,500 tonnes of ore, put that through...
Right in the middle of the resource. Basically.
Yeah, right through a cross-section, straight through the middle of the pit. And with that, what was good, it took basically through all the major ore zones that we're going to go through when the operation. And then we put that through the existing concentrator, as well as tested it through the on-site laboratory. So it's given us a great idea of the scale up from the lab to the commercial production. That's generated us in excess of about 50 tonnes of concentrate. 10 tonnes we brought to Perth, which we put through the lab, along with concentrate in different blends from Trafigura and other potential third-party feeds providers.
Because right now the idea is the downstream, the Ta Khoa Nickel Refinery would be taking half, potentially, of the material from your deposit Ban Phuc, but also 50% potentially from other sources.
That's right. So Ban Phuc will be the baseload feed. It is, it's good quality feed source. When we put it together with other sources, well, it's going to give us a really good balance when it comes to the levels of sulfur, levels of nickel, and all the contaminants. So from a blending perspective, it's a great baseload feed for us to start with. When you then blend it with the typical sort of concentrates you see on the market and will probably be available.
So where is this nickel sulfate market? Where would, from Vietnam, where do you think it's going to go?
To be honest, nickel sulfate is very widely, demanded at the moment. It's going to be it's the OEMs, it's the traders, it's the battery technology companies out of South Korea and Japan. All these sorts of companies are really demanding nickel sulfate. Obviously we're going to make nickel sulfate, but our end goal is to go all the way through to making the PCAM, the precursor to cathode active material. That material is really where we see the long-term value for the project lying. And recently, we've been spending a lot of time actually liaising through some key contacts out of China, as well as other OEM providers who specialize in PCAM production technology to really help us underpin our current DFS and get the design data we need to have confidence around the operating costs, the capital costs and operation of these plants.
So the DFS would go onto a PCAM.
Absolutely, yeah. So we see the sulfate as a potential, as a first step that we've done through the current pilot plant, and then the PCAM is the next stage we're looking, and that will be incorporated into this DFS as well.
Okay, you've got a market cap of what, about 100?
About 70 million.
70 million Australian. But this project is going to take like what, US 500, 600 million?
Altogether, including the mine, it's probably about 850.
850 between the two bits. So how are you looking at funding that?
So yeah, we've already had a lot of work done with different debt providers such as the Korean Development Bank and Bernvois, and they've given us good guidance around sort of the debt to equity ratios that this project would support, indicating sort of 70-30 debt to equity ratio would be supported. We'll probably look closer to the 60-40. So we'll look to go basically through export credit agencies as well as commercial banks to basically bring up the overall debt package while we look to raise the equity. The equity will be funded through partnerships. We're looking through partners at the moment through the likes of your typical maybe technology providers out of South Korea, Japan, maybe some of the commodity traders out of maybe Japan or out of Europe and around the world, as well as even OEMs we're talking to as well. And so, one of these guys will come on as a partner with us, and that will obviously give them part of the offtake. We will then be able to sell our portion of the offtake as well to help us raise the equity that we need to get this project off the ground. So
I guess in terms of catalysts or what's going to happen in the next 6 to 12 months, is that crucial now to
yeah, absolutely. Scott Williamson, my MD, and I recently came back from a trip to Korea. We have met with a lot of the majors in Korea, and a lot of
majors meaning cathode manufacturers,
the traders, OEMs, as well as other technology providers.
And when you say OEM, you mean the car manufacturers, basically?
Yeah, OEMs, so car manufacturers. Met with them all. They are very interested in the project, really for two main reasons. The cost, where we sit in the cost curve is right down the bottom end. We're competitive with the same sort of materials coming out of Indonesia, but we don't have that ESG overhang that they worry about of Indonesia.
Right, for laterite nickel.
That's right. And our carbon footprint is one of the lowest in the industry. And so, especially when you look in material that's probably going to go to, OEMs, which are, so car makers, which are making EVs, where their customers care about your carbon footprint, is actually becoming more and more attractive to these different companies, our low carbon footprint.
Okay. And we were talking before off camera or last week about the Inflation Reduction Act and the electric vehicle credit, and whether if you produce the parts or the minerals from Vietnam, whether it's applicable. Mm-hmm. But right now it is applicable for Europe.
That's right. Yeah. So if you're looking at a sulfate level, sulfate's applicable. So it looks like the boundary for the IRR comes in basically at sulfate level. So sulfate is going to be applicable. But when it comes to Europe, Vietnam has the free trade with Europe. And so we're seeing a lot more interest coming, given the fact that Europe seems to be going the same way as the US with similar sort of guidelines around supply and the ESG requirements for EVs. we're seeing increased interest because of that free trade agreement, given the fact that that free trade agreement then gives them a trade partner, which has all the benefits of China and, the other Southeast Asian countries, but with that free trade.
Okay, all right. So in terms of working capital, how well are you funded to deliver, I guess, the next catalyst up to the DFS?
Yeah, so I think from memory, we had about, at the end of the last quarter, with about $18 million in cash. And so we're well funded. That sees us through to the end of the DFS comfortably. We also got roughly, I think it's about just over $3 million of a research grant coming back from the government, which is basically based on money that's gone out the door, an Australian government incentive to help encourage research and development.
Okay. All right. Andrew?
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That's Andrew Strickland, executive from Blackstone Minerals on the ASX and also OTC listed, developing a nickel project in Vietnam to go all the way downstream to produce a nickel sulfate, or actually material that would go straight into the battery. So that's it for me. Joe Mazumdar, Exploration Insights at the pre-PDAC edition of the Metals Investment Forum in Toronto. Thank you very much.